Dax is one of the most disliked individuals to come out of the YouTube rap era. While most of the creators from the time have either been forgotten or are still revered to this day, Dax is actively hated and clowned on by music critics and YouTube fans alike. Videos from some of the biggest YouTubers, music critics, and YouTube music critics have taken Dax by storm, which raises the question, is it really deserved? Is Dax as bad as they say? To understand simultaneously why Dax is so disliked and why the quality may or may not be so terrible, it is important to know the full story of Dax. According to Joseph Itodo, I think that's how you say his name, Dax wanted to make music initially to support his own education, without any connections or ties to the entertainment industry. He decided to build his career on YouTube. His channel was created with a career in mind. He began his channel in the mid-2010s, and like most people trying to hold a good public image, his oldest content is no longer available. However, the first available video is a very good example of what he was making at the time. It is a spoken word music video cover. That was a mouthful. He quickly became known for remixing songs by artists like Tupac, Machine Gun Kelly, XXXTentacion, and even Ed Sheeran. These videos rapidly gained a decent amount of attention from people searching for the original songs. None of the covers were particularly groundbreaking, but he gained a bit of a cult following doing it. He had a clear talent for things like rapping and production. His exponential growth, however, would come from his utilization of memes. That's right, memes. There are many other artists that will use meme-related media as either the title of their albums or as samples in their music, but Dax seized the opportunities of popular memes to appear higher in the search results for people looking for those memes. His first major break was shortly after the Dr. Phil episode starring Danielle Bregoli, somehow making Dax not the most obnoxious rapper to be featured in this video. He created a remix of her iconic "Cash Me Outside" phrase and rapped over it. The video, with everything said and done, is quite funny. It quickly became his most popular video, and rightfully so. He wasn't scared to have his music laughed at as long as there were a few people bobbing their heads, and it worked so well in his favour. Most importantly, Dax wanted more eyes on his work, because at the end of the day, Dax wanted viewers and money, for he was a grifter. At just the right moment, Dax had built enough of his rapping quality skills and combined it with popular subjects. However, as good as it was, in the words of Koji Radical, "It's really much harder to maintain." To attempt to continue capitalizing off the success of using other artists' names in his titles, Dax released a mixtape called Tupac Reincarnation Volume 2 by Dax. Really rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? And yes, there isn't a Volume 1. It was certainly one of the mixtapes of all time. The mixtape was, in my opinion, a rather amateur homage to the late Tupac. It had some really weird concept about Tupac appearing to Dax in a dream and telling him that he was the next greatest rapper. It's really strange. It attempted to gain some notoriety off of Tupac's name while having Dax's own spin on it. The music is really not that great. It's probably his worst sounding album out of all of them. Unsurprisingly, it's only available on SoundCloud. It currently holds a whopping 1 out of 100 on Album of the Year. Is that number deserved? Perhaps not to that extent, but it certainly was not the best quality. It also feels oddly distasteful. Sure, it's better than using an AI version of his voice in a diss track, but it's still very odd to be making a whole album about someone that passed away. The grift was pretty obvious here, but it worked fairly well for him. People on SoundCloud seemed to like it, and nobody really acknowledged it more than that. Besides, the mixtape has thousands of likes. Despite this slip-up, his skills certainly existed, and many people were still very happy to listen to them. You can't deny the clarity of his vocals and his aggressive but smooth delivery in the bars that he has. His YouTube videos, and mixtape I guess, gained enough attention to release his first official original EP. It was received fairly well by his immediate audiences, now wielding songs ranking over 10 million listens on Spotify. The quality of the album, or EP, it's called multiple different things in multiple different places, is subpar at best. A lot of the audience at the time clearly thought that it was fire, but in retrospect, a lot of the reviews post-Hate Train imply that it's not as good as it said it was. It is definitely not his worst project, and boy, we will get to those, but unfortunately, it was just very derivative and did not show much originality or personality. He raps about his struggles with God, relationships, and his financial struggles. With his music mostly being covers of other songs, he had an easy way out of recycling the ideas that were brought up by the original artist. They were easy jump-off points, but for his own music, it was clearly harder to be original. Also, the metaphors in his lyrics don't exist. What he says on the record is exactly what he means. For you lovely rap analysts out there are no double or triple entendres. He also recycled so many typical rap tropes and wrote lyrics that sound very cliche, and when it isn't cliche, it's just not particularly good. That being said, it was well received and became very popular, but that was yet to be Dax's biggest break. In 2018, QuadEcca released a massive diss track on KSI called Insecure, based on a brief podcast clip where JJ name drops him. KSI hate seems to explode in the rap scene. In the same clip, KSI said that he would beat Dax in a rap battle. Dax responded to KSI in one of his killshot freestyles, telling him not to mention his name. To further jump on the bandwagon, Dax also called him out for a boxing match on Instagram Live, something that every single person in the universe seemed to do around that time. Within KSI's response to QuadEcca, he spent some time to name drop a few others, notably saying that Dax should "stop it man, you ain't that." While being a rather insignificant line, Dax was obviously going to seize the opportunity. Then, on the 6th of December 2018, the YouTuber Comedy Shorts Gamer, also known as Deji, released a diss track on his own brother, KSI. Explaining it without all the extra context makes it sound really stupid, and yes, it is as stupid as it sounds. He actually just made a diss track on his brother. The song was a culmination of Deji's anger towards his brother for many things, like supporting someone Deji was in a diss track war with, who was KSI's working partner at the time. Deji's song was an angry way of saying, "How can a man choose friends over family?" To make the track hit harder, Deji invited white YouTube rapper Crypt to have a fast verse, his editor, because they needed a fourth person, and Dax, because he was actually good. In all fairness, Dax's verse on the song was incredible. Part of it may have been the shock at the time that such a video would even exist, but having an actually competent rapper on the track, combined with all the accusations throughout the rest of the track, made it so brutal. So brutal that the comments were claiming things like, "Dax snapped." His verse actually goes so hard as well, despite him not really saying anything important. Despite calling himself a mainstream rapper and not a YouTube one, Dax's channel skyrocketed after that point, taking him from about 700,000 subscribers to 1 million very quickly. He was riding high. Despite KSI's fanbase hating him, they could not help but think his verse was very good. Dax thrived off of the "I hate him, but he's so good" train. Dax's success was finally properly tangible. Shortly after, he released a song with QuadEcca in January 2019, which may have been the beginning of his official downfall. Let me explain why. In the QuadEcca x Dax song known as War, Dax made a comment about being a janitor. Strong-eared listeners would notice that this major collaboration with Ben and his diss track on KSI, some of his biggest breaks into the rap scene, reused a lot of concepts and lyrics from his EP.
Murder, body bag in a toe tag. I got your body in a toe tag. No cash, no cap, no collab. No, can't collab. Want beef, put it in the caption. Just want beef, put it in the caption. I want tweet, never about rapping. Just want tweet, never about rapping.
KSI seized the opportunity to make fun of him for this, mocking Dax consistently on the second channel, which was receiving more views than Dax had subscribers at the time. This dramatically shifted the tide from thinking that Dax was a good rapper but a cringe person to thinking that Dax was bad overall. The Dax's cringe train would only continue when Tory Lanes tweeted that he was the best rapper alive, and Dax naturally responded with a diss track calling him out. Lanes was very obviously upset by it, so he found Dax in person and shouted at him to apologise. Which Dax did, to be fair, prioritising the safety of himself and his family. Even though this was a very good thing to do, he was no doubt clowned on it for not being as hood as he implied in his music. People like KSI used this as a great opportunity to dunk on Dax. Around a similar time, Dax featured on a song with Screwface Jean, Crypt, and QuadEcca called Four Horsemen. The song is not good, but it included an interesting line where Dax said that the group was 4 Kanye song titles and a goat. Screw and Crypt were very upset by this, and Quadeca didn't care. Crypt later released a video explaining how Dax tried to get a lot of money out of the music video, and ended up sending a very short verse, hence why Screw and Quadeca are even on the song. Dax tried to change history by redoing his verse, but Crypt was still angry. Dax then released a diss track called Whack Ass Rappers, distancing himself further from these people and making them hate him even more. He was hence hated by the community that built him, and the overarching music industry, and the overarching YouTube industry. This was worsened by massive allegations of Dax stealing lyrics for his music. Not only did he recycle the same janitor line over and over, he also copied other people's lyrics. At this point, Dax was known to be a grifter very publicly. People did not like him very much because of his controversies, and because he was viewed as cringe. Very quickly, Dax would capitalize on this, by making songs that would intentionally spark attention, like his Joker song, his songs about the Grinch, his song about the Joker, his remixes of Rap God, his songs about the Joker. He really did like repeating a formula that worked, didn't he? Dax had always been well known but not really liked. He had a dedicated fanbase of white boys that liked his rapping, but there wasn't much validity to it. You may have noticed that I've not really been talking about the actual music. That's because there is a lot of context to why his music is so hated. While trying to be this intentionally cringe, hateable, and obnoxious rapper, Dax was attempting to make heartfelt and political music as well. He made songs about Black Lives Matter, coronavirus, Black Santa. Okay. And these clashed so hard that they just did not help his image. His album, titled I'll Say It For You, released in 2020, was certainly audio files published on Spotify. He made a number of heartfelt songs. He rapped about his struggles with God, relationships, and his financial... Hey, I'm getting deja vu. Some of it was very effective, like his song Dear God, which rather explicitly discusses his issues with trusting in God because of how distorted his life and perception of faith is. But songs like Book of Revelations and the rather poorly timed I Can't Breathe were songs disguised as being profound, but really were just rants to fill out the runtime. The quality was still quite low and did not hold up so well on its own. This album is basically to Dax what Smithereens is to Joji. It was most likely made to release 1 or 2 songs, but needed to be turned into a full release. The issue with all of these songs, including Dear God unfortunately, was that there aren't really that many layers to them, both from a musical perspective and from a writing one. You can't take much more than what he says at face value. This does work for some albums, don't get me wrong, but for something as complicated as Faith, it is not executed very well here. Especially because, when you look at his other music, his theology is a lot more complex than just whether or not he believes in God. Riding off of the success of Dear God, a few years later he would release songs like Dear Mum and Dear Alcohol. While I personally do not think that Dear Alcohol sounds pleasing to my ears, it certainly dealt with a topic that's very relatable to so many people. He took a depressive style rap and utilised it in a way that would give him his biggest solo song so far. One that even KSI would congratulate him on.
I'm very proud of him. I know I've clowned him a lot, but I'm very happy for him. Yeah, you have to respect him, man. It shows, the type of person he is. He's resilient, works hard, and he's managed to get his platinum, so fair play to him, man.
Something evidenced greatly by his song Dear Alcohol, however, was another one of Dax's grifts. His move to making country rap fusion, which attracts a very specific type of audience. He was already capitalising off of white rap fans because of where he found his roots. With the rest of the rap industry already hating him, the only way out for him was to concede to rap. On Dax's album titled Pain Paints Paintings, he made a number of chart-bait songs that disguised themselves as being edgy. However, he had a number of very big features on the album. Within the song Propaganda, Dax featured the controversial white rapper Tom MacDonald, one of the lowest rated artists ever on Album of the Year and Rate Your Music, creator of some of the lowest rated albums in history, someone hated across many platforms but loved by a vocal minority of white Americans. Dax featured him on a song with some backlash. Then, on his 2023 release, What Is Life, he capitalised on the lonely sad boy audience that he had cultivated by releasing a song called To Be a Man. This was obviously targeted towards a very certain type of audience, an audience that seemed to be growing after the success of figures like Andrew Tate and Sneeko. But because of the controversial nature of the song, it became something that he was made fun of for by a lot of people that had never heard of Dax before. This was worsened by the release of Tom MacDonald's The Brave 2 the next month, which includes one of the best lyrics of all time.
It's okay to be racist.
On the album, Dax featured on the song Black and White. Dax has a great line on the song where he forgives all white people for everything they've ever done to black people. How brave. Obviously, this track was made to appeal to the, okay, I don't like rap, but this is kinda fire crowd. Dax is also capitalizing off of the people that don't like typical rap, but will accept Dax because he supports white people. Dax's reputation was not taken seriously anyway, so naturally, his grift was to pander to the only people that would take him seriously. As a consequence, his reputation is muddied quite heavily. That of course does not mean that he's no longer popular. He has recently surpassed 3 million monthly listeners on Spotify, more than a lot of mainstream artists have, but this is of course at the expense of his music being disliked. From songs where he screams with autotune, to others where he tells you exactly how to feel. He uses his audience to pander to exactly what they want to hear, like saying how hard being a man is. Twice. Dax's music is not exactly as bad as they say, ignoring what he's actually discussing. His technical ability is definitely there. He is a decent rapper, he can rap very clearly, and the production is not bad at all. But the lyrics are either incredibly on the nose all the time, or just being controversial for the sake of being controversial. He has so much talent and potential, but for the sake of success, he's directed it the wrong way. His music is perhaps not worth a 0, and he is by no means as bad as other YouTube musicians like Onision, but his music is certainly not admirable or something to aspire towards. Dax wants to be 4 things at once: an edgy white boy rapper, a soft boy depressive rapper, a deep philosophical rapper, and a corny goofball rapper. This gives him a really weird and jarring discography which just fails in so many ways musically. Again, his quality is not necessarily bad, but the concepts don't work together. Something that's quite annoying is that conceptually, Dax's music could be incredibly interesting. There are Christian rappers and non-Christian rappers around, but as a bit more of an agnostic rapper as he seems to be, it sounds quite intriguing. Songs like Dear God and a lot of his other music really tap into the potential of what he could be doing with his music, questioning his own faith and questioning other people's faith at the same time. But unfortunately, Dax is really not the one to do it. His reputation is so flawed and the quality is so poor that even IDK's Is He Real feels less on the nose about the question of faith and God. I really hope that someday there will be an artist that covers the same theological ideas in music, because, again, conceptually, Dax has a lot going for him here, or at least did. But coupled with the oddly racist and sad boy rap aim he's going for, something's not quite right. He seems to latch onto a very specific style and topic and exhausts it for all it's good for without adding anything, then moving on. I don't know what his next move will be, but I'll certainly be here to support it if it's good, and have a chuckle if it isn't. As it stands, Dax's music is not particularly great. It isn't as bad as the haters will imply, but it's nothing new or groundbreaking. It's not worth a 0, but it's not worth anything above a 40. It's Different Now would get a 20 out of 100 from me. Pain Paints Paintings would get a 27. What Is Life gets a 17. I'll Say It For You gets a 17. And Tupac Reincarnation Volume 2 by Dax probably gets a 10 out of 100. Thank you all very much for watching. Please subscribe. And as always, it's Dax.
Big man called, they don't wanna see your uploads pop up ever on YouTube. He'll bust you out of your 2 shoes. Uppercut to the jaw.